News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, Boris Johnson's Sue Gray D-Day has arrived, and while it's crucial the PM shakes up his Downing Street operation, I'm dead serious when I say he must not resign, not unless you want a nightmare coalition of Labour and the SNP. My digest coming up next before I get my superstar panel's thoughts on the Partygate report and the explosive aftermath. Tonight, I'm joined by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, social commentator Esther Kraku, and senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth. Then, as some of the Prime Minister's biggest supporters withdraw their backing, his ally Peter Bone MP does battle with Jonathan Haslam, John Major's former Director of Communications, over whether Boris should stay in number 10. That's in the clash. How did the PM's Partygate performance in the Commons go down with his party? And has he done enough to stave off a mutiny? Sir Geoffrey Clinton-Brown, Treasurer of the 1922 Committee, and Conservative MP Joy Morrissey will bring crucial insight at 10:20. Plus, is Keir Starmer guilty of political opportunism over Partygate? That's the view of Boris, but what do my panel think? I'll find out at 10, where we'll also get a first look at how the papers respond to today's Commons showdown. Elsewhere on the show, would you have ever believed that the leader of my homeland, New Zealand, would be less empathetic to a pregnant woman than the Taliban? Star journalist Charlotte Bellis, who became a hero for questioning the militant movement on women's rights, certainly wouldn't. But that was before Jacinda Ardern locked her out of her own country, forcing her to seek refuge in Afghanistan. She'll join me to discuss her shocking story live from Kabul. Sanity has prevailed to the relief of unvaccinated NHS workers. Sajid Javid announced today that the no jabs, no jobs mandate is set to be scrapped.
I'm announcing that we will launch a consultation on ending vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and all social care settings.
But how did we ever let it go this far? Positive Professor Carol Sikora is uncancelled in a special segment tonight, reacting to the Health Secretary's U-turn. Plus, most of the mainstream media have tried to avoid this story as much as they possibly can. But could this amazing freedom convoy force one of the world's wokest leaders, Justin Trudeau, to change his tune on COVID? GB News star Neil Oliver is here to break down what happened in The Outsider at 9:45. And as Joe Rogan speaks out on his Spotify controversy for the first time, are the streaming giant's other big stars, Harry and Meghan, hypocrites for speaking out while still collecting a big fat paycheck? I'll ask my panel in the Media Buzz at 10:30. Plus, we'll coronate a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the end of the show. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. A note about the former chairman of this channel, Andrew Neil. After quitting his own start-up in a huff following just, I think, 10 shows on air, Mr. Establishment is so desperate to remain at a TV channel that will support his penchant for quaffing champagne on private jets while funding his apartment in New York, so keen that he's in talks to join Channel 4. You couldn't make that up, could you? The Channel 4 that he described himself as the broadcasting arm of The Guardian. Well, we got his first Channel 4 effort last night, a low-budget establishment hit piece on Boris Johnson that the lefties would have lapped up.
When I took over as chairman of The Spectator, he was the editor. He was hugely creative and inventive, but also he didn't do all the work of editing. I mean, he had a deputy who did all the work.
The fact that there were mistakes that were made by people in positions of, influence and prestige is incredibly difficult.
The danger for him is that people conclude that we are where we are only because of his peculiar, personal, self-absorbed style of government.
At least we gave him an auto cue. What a disappointment Mr. Neil has proven to be. In the last few months, I've heard he's been smoking cigars at mansions late at night with Tony Blair and dining with BBC boss Tim Davie, probably begging for his old gig back. Look, I believed Mr. Neil genuinely wanted to shake up biased news broadcasting in this country, to deliver for those ignored by the BBC, ITV News, Sky News, and yes, Channel 4. But I was wrong. He's an establishment man through and through, and he belongs at Channel 4. My digest on today's Sue Gray report release coming up and why Boris Johnson should not resign. But first, the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Here are the top stories in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he's sorry for the things the government did not get right after Sue Gray's report revealed a failure of leadership for allowing number 10 gatherings during lockdown. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will publish an updated report once the Met probe concludes, after Sue Gray said her report is extremely limited. Boris Johnson told the Commons today he accepts Sue Gray's general findings in full.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. Mr. Speaker, I get it, and I will fix it.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer appealed to the Conservative MPs to end what he called a farce.
Night follows day. Continuing his leadership will mean further misconduct, cover-up and deceit.
The Foreign Secretary has announced new legislation that will give the government new powers to sanction individuals and businesses linked to the Russian state. Liz Truss and the Prime Minister are meeting the Ukrainian President tomorrow in Kiev amid fears of a Russian invasion. Ms Truss says the new legislation that'll be in place by February the 10th will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we've ever had.
This will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we have ever had, and it is the most radical departure in approach since leaving the European Union. Those in and around the Kremlin will have nowhere to hide. We will make sure that those who share responsibility for the Kremlin's aggressive and destabilising action will share in bearing a heavy cost.
A British woman who was found guilty of lying about being gang raped in Cyprus has had her conviction overturned. The woman, who's now 21, was given a 4-month suspended sentence in 2020 for public mischief after withdrawing her allegation. The Supreme Court of Cyprus found she'd not been given a fair trial. The Health Secretary is launching a consultation into whether it should be a legal requirement for health and social care workers to be vaccinated against coronavirus. Sajid Javid told the Commons mandatory vaccines for NHS workers was the right decision when it was made last year, when the Delta variant was dominant. He's asked for new advice from scientists now the milder Omicron variant is prevalent. Footballer Christian Eriksen has signed for Premier League club Brentford 7 months after suffering a cardiac arrest on the pitch while playing for Denmark. The 29-year-old, who's been fitted with an internal defibrillator, hasn't played since he collapsed at Euro 2020. The former Tottenham midfielder has signed a 6-month deal. You're up to date. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now let's get back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Boris Johnson should not resign. In fact, he must not resign. Now, hear me out. I'm as furious as you about the egregious rule-breaking goings-on at number 10 Downing Street throughout the pandemic, as we all remain locked up in our homes with our civil liberties stripped away by an overzealous government. But we do not live in a country where the establishment and the left-wing broadcast media can collude with each other to cover one story so constantly with so much fervour that they try and bulldoze Tory MPs into sacking a Prime Minister democratically elected in a landslide just 2 years ago. Yes, Boris Johnson has serious questions to answer. He must immediately shake up his Downing Street operation and he must immediately change course on a dodgy pandemic policy agenda that has seen him morph from a low-tax, liberty-loving politician into a big state control freak. But let's go to a place where the BBC, ITV News, Sky News and Channel 4 News never venture, outside the politically obsessed Westminster bubble that's determined to bring down Boris at any cost. I instead want to share with you the Tees Valley Mayor, Ben Houchen's view on Boris. Remember, Houchen is the standard bearer for the Red Wall, and he wrote in today's Times, "The nonsense of what's happening within the parliamentary party is so infuriating. If they vote to get rid of Boris, they'll be voting to lose the next election. If Boris is removed, the opportunity before us to rebalance our economy and society will be lost. Even worse, the levelling up agenda would be dead. Indeed, a communicator without the current Prime Minister's unique skills would be fighting to be heard over the sound of a North London commentariat with ears only for the infighting within the Conservative Party. Meanwhile, voters and left-behind areas would tune out of seeing themselves cheated of the Prime Minister they chose as their own and listening again to the siren voices of other parties, both to the left and to the right." I believe Houchen is right. And Boris got it right today, saying the word sorry, something he hates to do, and vowing to change.
But firstly, I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. This pandemic was hard for everyone. We asked people across this country to make the most extraordinary sacrifices, not to meet loved ones, not to visit relatives before they died. And I understand the anger that people feel. Mr. Speaker, I get it, and I will fix it.
Remember, those that benefit most from Boris resigning are the Labour Party and the SNP, who are determined to form a nightmare coalition that would end the union and destroy this country as we know it. Oh, and by the way, do you really want this woman as your Deputy Prime Minister?
I'm absolutely shocked that Boris Johnson can even show his face in Parliament today. If he stands up at that dispatch box shortly, the only things he should be saying is how truly sorry he is for letting down the British public, and he should be resigning.
The girl who cried wolf. Now, I repeat, there are serious questions for Boris Johnson to answer. In my view, the frequency of those number 10 booze-ups proves that the draconian coronavirus restrictions were inhumane and should never have been law. I think the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, summed up the ludicrous nature of the situation best today when she asked Boris this.
They had a right to expect their Prime Minister to have read the rules, to understand the meaning of the rules, and indeed those around him to have done so too, and to set an example in following those rules.
But look, that is the problem for Boris, right? Today's Grey report just the first stage in an ongoing Partygate hellscape thanks to the useless Met Commissioner Cressida Dick, who has delayed the painful process for weeks or maybe even months. But the Conservative Party, while understandably furious, should keep the bigger picture in mind. Conservative Home has revealed a majority of Tory members surveyed by its website now think Partygate is overblown. Ordinary folk are far more concerned about the economy, the cost of living crisis, the NHS backlog, how we can avoid ever being locked down again, and even the potential of a new Russian war with Ukraine. Good, honest Brits know the craven BBC and the rest of the left-wing broadcast media has an obvious agenda to destroy Boris and seek revenge for Brexit. That's why Tory MPs should focus on what really matters and avoid a damaging leadership contest that would create divisions that would take a generation to repair. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Krakow. Esther, you don't think Boris is going anywhere?
I don't think he's going anywhere. Now, I think I'm probably the only person on the panel that will speak as a traditional Tory voter. I think for the future of the Tory party, even resembling some party with credibility, I think he should resign. However, there is no credible alternative or suitable alternative, and I think the timing wouldn't be great. So just for that reason, he has to say. But I can honestly say it's really left a bad taste in my mouth. And even with the whole levelling up agenda, every time I see him speaking about it, I just see, OK, we're coming out of this pandemic that has devastated so many lives while you and your colleagues were having parties at number 10. I can't really take you very seriously. And the bigger risk is that people in, particularly my demographic, let's say 35 and under, are becoming even more disillusioned with politics. And we're leaning more like sort of away from mainstream media and just kind of sitting on YouTube and just doing our own thing. And I think that's a terrible thing for the country because we really need to sort of get everyone riled up for this, I suppose, levelling up agenda.
Carol, your newspaper, The Daily Express, has remained very loyal to Boris Johnson. Do you take their position on this?
You know what, as the story about traditional Tories, I think probably every single Tory today wanted to see him. They wanted to see real contrition. They have wanted to see honesty all the way through, and they've wanted transparency.
Did we get that?
And we got none of those things today. And this is the problem, I think, for all Tories. I'm with you in the sense that, for me, there's nobody else waiting to come. I think it would be a disaster. I think, how long can we keep on talking about parties? We've got Ukraine, the NHS hike. We've got all sorts of things happening. And we're talking about parties. But the bottom line is he let so many people down. He let Tories down. He let traditional and otherwise Tories down. And, I don't think he should go anywhere. But it doesn't... And I think a lot of MPs, Tory MPs, whilst being very uncomfortable with that report today, will not move against him yet.
But then
however,
forward,
it doesn't make him...
It makes it very nerve-wracking looking at the next elections that will be coming up. Because it's literally on a knife edge. Because the Tories, going beyond Boris, the Tories don't look like a credible party because we have the sleazeball leading the country.
If they bring the next report out and he is not transparent on that, I think they will have to replace him because they will lose the next election.
But nothing that comes out of his mouth is true.
Says, you replace Boris, you've lost the next election. And this guy, he's the standard bearer. He's the pin-up for the red wall.
There's a part of me agrees with that, but I'm not sure that's what a lot of Tories out there think. Look how he plummeted in the polls over the past 2 weeks. Labour were 10 points ahead at one point. It's coming back a little bit now, but a lot of people beyond the red wall, he might speak for some of the people there, but a lot of the people on the red wall won't forgive him. Remember he put at the start, when he got their vote, he said, trust me with it, I will not let you down.
But I think my point is, Carol, I actually agree with that, but I think my point is, can we not have the BBC and pollsters tell us that? Let's wait. The voters have an opportunity to go to the polls in most parts of the country in the May elections. Let's at least wait for that. Benjamin Butterworth, do you agree with your comrade there, Angela Rayner, and say Boris should resign?
Well, clearly Boris should resign, and lots of people have said that, including lots of Conservative MPs and voters. Look, I just think the patronising twaddle to think that the only hope for the working class in this country is Boris Johnson. That is so condescending. And the idea that you somehow think it's mutually exclusive between having standards in public life, having basic integrity of the office of Prime Minister, of being
Mate, you love Tony Blair.
of being
You
honest.
love Tony Blair.
Yeah,
and
that's
you
a
wanted
shut him
to
up.
keep Tony Blair in office. Someone who had no standards, someone who took us into a
here we
probably
go.
illegal war.
Talk
So
about
I
anything
will
but
not
the
have
reality.
Benjamin Butterworth,
Talk
Mr.
about
Tony
anything
Blair
but the
supporter,
reality we're
tell me
dealing
about
with.
standards in public office.
Do you know what? You're deflecting because you know you're wrong. You know that most people in this country are furious at Boris Johnson, that he's not
And I am
capable
furious
of the
at
job
him. I've
that he's
criticised
in.
him. I'm just saying I don't want the mainstream
you're his
media
biggest
to force
torchbearer
How
now.
does he keep getting wrong? You know, today his tone was entirely wrong.
Carol, he said sorry.
Did you see the way he said
exactly.
sorry?
He didn't look like
he said sorry, not sorry.
He didn't. It wasn't. He said sorry, but then he rushed on. I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that. Well, we can all do that. It doesn't mean you're sorry. He didn't look
But
sorry.
what if he cried?
And he didn't sound sorry. No, but it just didn't look genuine to me or to a lot of other people. I'm sure.
I think the
And that's
biggest
the
issue
problem.
I have with I don't think, and with all due respect, I don't think the red wall should be even a conversation in this, because the Tories still have a base to appeal to. I don't think it's a good strategy to say actually Boris should stay because the red wall might vote for him. That was a one-off vote.
But
and he
Esther,
needs
they
to
gave
accept
him
that.
the red wall gave him that majority.
They're never
going to
give it to him again.
To do
They're
what
never going to give it to him
Well,
again.
and by the way, the
You're
Red
right.
Wall still voted for a manifesto that was based on low taxes and freedom.
Yeah.
So this
And
idea
net
that,
zero.
that the Red Wall voted exactly that the Red Wall voted for all of these greeny policies and
did.
massive high taxes.
No,
as
they
if
didn't.
They
They
did.
voted
Net
to get
zero is in
Brexit
the
done.
manifesto, but strangely you don't mention that.
Benjamin Butterworth, you still think Tony Blair should have stayed in office, but you want Boris Johnson to go? Can I just have to understand the contradiction.
Pathetic argument, Dan.
No, it's not.
It is a pathetic argument. The bloke left office 15 years ago. Why are you so obsessed with him? The truth is,
After entering an illegal war.
the Tories should do better than Boris Johnson. The
Tories should do better than Tony Blair, who you thought should stay in office, despite an illegal war, despite a police investigation because of the cash for honours.
And to be honest,
So I
Tony
just
Blair
don't
now
think we
looks a
should be
lot more like
taking
a
lectures from
Conservative.
Tony Blair backers like
Presumably,
you.
you take the standard that Tony Blair said he would apply to himself, which is that he said, if I'm interviewed under caution, then I will resign. You expect that of Boris Johnson, I assume?
Not necessarily, no.
Ah, now it's all coming out, isn't it?
What? I'm sorry, Benjamin.
No,
do
just
we
tried
not
to
live
take
in
the
a
moral high
society?
ground about
Do we not
Tony
live in
Blair,
a
but you
society?
won't apply it to
Do we
Boris
not live in a
Johnson?
society where you're innocent until proven guilty? And we also live in a society where, by the way,
I think we know
don't
what he's
sack
done.
people from their jobs for a speeding fine. Now, look, I have said time and again what was going on at number 10 Downing Street was a complete disgrace over the course of the pandemic. It was
But you
a
don't want to have
disgrace.
consequence.
No, because I want there to be an actual conversation, Benjamin, about what this really shows. And what it really shows is that the rules and the laws were an ass, because even number 10 Downing Street was not scared of the virus. Even number 10 Downing Street
That's
was not
irrelevant.
following
To be
the
honest,
rules.
Dan, that is totally
It's not irrelevant.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
actually, that is very
If you
key
make,
point.
if the rules
It is
are,
the key
if
point.
you make the rules, well, then the government and the people in it have to keep them. End
But
of
the
story.
rules were
Doesn't
immoral.
matter. It doesn't matter. They were in place. They were law, and they didn't keep them, and that's the point.
The rules
but
were immoral.
Doesn't matter. That's not the point. He should have still stuck to them.
But
You
that
can't tell us
doesn't
to
just
stick
apply
to them
to our government.
and then say
the
it's
whole
okay
of the
for
House
him
of
to
Commons
break them.
didn't follow
You
it.
can't do it.
I'm sorry, no, but this is a cross-party issue. That wasn't the rules didn't just apply to our government that implemented it. It applied to the Labour
Well,
Party,
yes,
the
of course,
SNP.
them as well.
There's
I'm
a lot
sorry.
more to discuss, but luckily the good news is Esther Kraku, Benjamin Butterworth and Carol Malone are here all night, so we've got lots of time to do so. Also coming up in the clash is some of the Prime Minister's biggest supporters withdraw their backing. Should Boris ignore them and stay in number 10 post-Partygate? His ally Peterbone MP does battle with Jonathan Haslam, John Major's former comms director. Want your view too? Dan at gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. But next, does Jacinda Ardern's government have less empathy than the Taliban? Well, they've certainly shown pregnant journalist Charlotte Ballas more kindness than Ardern's COVID zealots after she again lost in her battle with cruel Kiwi government advisors as she's continually denied the right to return home so she can give birth safely. Charlotte will join me to discuss her shocking ongoing ordeal straight after the break.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into Northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales, and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not as windy as the weekend, but of course, because we're in the recovery situation here, any winds could cause some further disruption. So we do have a yellow warning in place. Some sunny spells in the northeast. Temperatures well above average, 11, 12, maybe 13 Celsius. Through tomorrow evening, we'll see some further outbreaks of rain and drizzle across North Wales, Northern Ireland, further showers in the far northeast where the winds will be easing down, generally staying fairly cloudy. So again, most places frost-free as we head into Wednesday. But Wednesday, again, predominantly cloudy, rain at times for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, not as windy in the far northeast, just a few showers here. Some breaks in the south in the clouds could reveal a bit of sunshine. And it will be very mild again. Temperatures once more for the vast majority, double figures, 11 in Hull, 10 in Cardiff, maybe 11 or 10 in the southwest of England as well. So very mild for the next couple of days. That mild air hangs on Thursday, but a cold front sweeps through, bringing a much colder feel by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Neil Oliver and Carol Sikora on the way. But first, tenacious Kiwi reporter Charlotte Bellis shot to international fame last year when she fearlessly questioned the Taliban about their treatment of women.
There's a lot of concern about whether women will be allowed to work, that girls can still go to school. What assurances can you give to women and girls that their rights will be protected?
Well, at that time, Charlotte probably didn't anticipate that the Taliban would actually show her more kindness and empathy than her own government, as Jacinda Ardern's unimaginably cruel border rules have trapped her in Afghanistan, unmarried, pregnant and in danger.
Have served us really well. It has enabled us to slow down the entry of Omicron. And what we want to make sure is that whilst we're dealing with Omicron, that we are still being cautious in our reopening plans to make sure that, yes, we are making progress, but we're doing it in a staged way.
So Ardern doesn't even want anyone in the country if you have a passport, if you have a New Zealand passport. That's very difficult for Charlotte, who discovered she was expecting shortly after that gutsy presser performance I showed you earlier, and had to leave her home in Qatar, where sex outside marriage is illegal, before eventually returning to Afghanistan because it was the only place that she had a visa to live with her partner. And despite Afghanistan's maternity care being described as a potential death sentence, the COVID zealots in the New Zealand government cruelly rejected her emergency application for a medical exemption so she can return home to give birth safely. Well, Charlotte, I'm delighted to say, joins me now from Kabul. And Charlotte, I am so delighted that the whole world is talking about your story, because what you've done is shine the light on an issue that I have been enraged about for so long. I mean, New Zealand is literally the only country in the world that is not allowing its own citizens to return.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to talking to you, because I've been reading your articles and following your coverage. And now it is very personal for me. Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild ride. And yeah, about a week after that press conference, I conceived a little girl, which has led to this kind of wild ride of having to leave Qatar and then not being able to get back into New Zealand. I played the lottery system that they've had going during the pandemic and never secured a spot. Then the New Zealand borders were meant to open into February, and my partner and I, who's also a journalist here, said, okay, we just need about 2 months to hold us over somewhere until we can get in. Where can we go? And we could both work here and live here. So I approached the Taliban and said, you know, do you think we're going to have an issue? I had a few contacts who have a little more sway than others, and said, yeah, what do you think? We're not married, and I'm going to be pregnant. So yeah, and they were really gracious actually, and said, you know, we appreciate this is a really difficult position that you can't get home. We feel sorry for you, and you know, you're a foreigner. This is your culture, not ours. But you know, good luck, and we wish you the best, and you're safe here. So that was one thing. And now the government has rejected me to return, saying I don't meet the medical threshold for needing treatment.
I mean, it's extraordinary to me because, firstly, congratulations. I mean, you're pregnant. This should be a moment of huge celebration. But I can only imagine, Charlotte, the stress that you feel, because you simply do not know if you will be allowed to return to your homeland with your partner in order to give birth.
Yeah, I mean, it is stressful on multiple levels, not the uncertainty, for one thing. Also, I mean, we tried to keep this very quiet for quite a long time. It was about 5 months because we knew there'd be drama associated with it, and we didn't want that. But it wasn't until the government rejected us that we thought, actually, we're going to have to set this up. And we talked to our lawyer about filing a judicial review in New Zealand. And we press and said, you know, this is our circumstances, and rejected. And if we're rejected, then what does that mean for all the other pregnant New Zealand women abroad? I mean, my case is pretty exceptional. I mean, what if you're, you know, in the US and don't have health insurance or something? You know, there's no hope for you, is what they're essentially saying.
Well, of course.
And all the other Kiwis that have been in these situations, and just really the system at this point really doesn't make sense anymore.
Well, no, and the reality is, Charlotte, I completely agree. I mean, doing this to a pregnant woman is a disgrace. But this is happening to all sorts of different New Zealanders. It's against the law, in my opinion, because I've looked closely at the government's Immigration Act. It goes against what is incited on your New Zealand passport. But I think the thing, Charlotte, that will really shock people in the UK is that while Ardern has closed the borders effectively to New Zealand citizens like you and like me, she has allowed certain foreigners to enter the country over the course of this pandemic. For example, British DJs have been able to enter New Zealand in order to perform at international music festivals. Sports people have been allowed. So it really does feel like a policy that actually discriminates against certain types of individuals, which makes it even more bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, I think New Zealanders over the pandemic have found it really hard to watch, but I guess in my own case, right now the cricket Women's World Cup is on in New Zealand, and teams have been flown in from 7 different countries and given a back door into MIQ. And I'm here fighting, having to talk about this in global media to try and get some pressure to say, you know, can we please show some empathy and logic here? And I mean, my point is, like, I don't know what they should do in terms of MIQ. I don't want to say do this or do that. But they
just to explain, Charlotte, MIQ is this process where people who return to the country have to spend 14 days or 10 to 14 days literally locked in a government-run hotel. There's armed forces at the hotel stopping you from absconding. But you were totally prepared to do that in order to get home.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be biting off a little bit more than I could chew to then fight them on that. I mean, at this point, I just want to get in the door so that I can give birth safely. And we're yet to hear back from the government. They suggested that we apply in a different category after rejecting us. That category actually didn't apply to us. We went back to them and said, look, it continues to be we need medical treatment. What's the problem here? And we don't have an answer to that. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we're looking at legal avenues, and I'm 25 weeks pregnant, so we're running out of time.
Oh, my goodness. Charlotte, what's your message to Jacinda Ardern? This is a woman who has become famous all over the world, apparently because of her compassion. What's your message to her, woman to woman?
I mean, I was actually a big fan of Jacinda and MIQ for quite a long time. I think it was very effective at keeping COVID out and protecting New Zealanders and saving a lot of lives. I think at the moment it's got to the point where, look, Omicron's in the community. New Zealand's 93% vaxxed. If you're positive in New Zealand, you can just home isolate. But if you're negative and boosted and in a desperate situation abroad, you can't get on a plane. And I hope that Jacinda and other ministers take a step back and say, hang on, this just isn't fit for purpose anymore. And we're putting a lot of Kiwis abroad through a lot of pain. And we really need to scrutinise this and come up with a better way.
Absolutely. Well, Charlotte Vallis, look, thank you so much for shining a light on this. We'll continue to follow your story. Of course, it's particularly ironic given you're such a brave reporter who New Zealand should be incredibly proud to have home. So good luck, Charlotte, and please do keep in touch. I will tell you that New Zealand's COVID-19 response minister, Chris Hipkins, has said there were places in MIQ available for people with special circumstances. The emergency allocation criteria includes a requirement to travel to New Zealand within the next 14 days. Ms. Vallis indicated she did not intend to travel until the end of February and has been encouraged by MIQ to consider moving her plans forward. I understand officials have also since invited her to apply for another emergency category. I encourage her to take those offers seriously. I also understand she was offered New Zealand consular assistance twice since she returned from Afghanistan in early December. I'm sorry, it's not good enough. Jacinda Ardern, you must drop this inhumane and cruel policy because folk will never forget it. Coming up, the MSM have tried to avoid this story as much as they possibly can, but could a convoy of freedom-loving truckers force one of the world's wokest leaders, Justin Trudeau, into a COVID U-turn? GB News star Neil Oliver delivers the latest on that fascinating story in The Outsider. But next in the clash, as the dust begins to settle on Partygate, should Boris Johnson stay on as PM? Peterbone MP and former Number 10 Comms Director Jonathan Haslam will go head-to-head, and today, more than ever, your opinion on this is critical. You can email me, dan@gbnews.uk. Do you want Boris to stay? Tweet me at GBNews, and we've got a poll running there right now.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
The great Neil Oliver on the way, but time now for the clash. Unsurprisingly, Boris Johnson faced scathing criticism from opposition MPs in Parliament today as furious members queued up to criticise him following the release of Sue Gray's redacted report. But what will have wounded him the most was veteran Tory backbenchers like former Minister Andrew Mitchell turning their back on him.
Deeply concerned by these events and very concerned indeed by some of the things he has said from that dispatch box and has said to the British public and our constituents. When he kindly invited me to see him 10 days ago, I told him that I thought he should think very carefully about what was now in the best interests of our country and of the Conservative Party. And I have to tell him he no longer enjoys my support.
Mr. Speaker, I must tell respectfully my right honourable friend, great though the admiration is that I have of him, I simply think that he's mistaken in his views, and I urge him to reconsider upon full consideration of the inquiry.
So despite the Conservative revolt still bubbling on the backbenches, should Boris stay as our Prime Minister? Well, one veteran Tory MP, Peter Bone, is standing firmly behind the PM, who he thinks has got all the big calls right. But he'll be going head-to-head tonight with John Major's former Director of Communications, Jonathan Haslam, who is adamant he's got to go. But as always, your opinion is the most important. What do you think? Should Boris be able to ride out this never-ending Partygate storm and stay at number 10? Dan at gbnews.uk, tweet me at gbnews. Well, we'll get those results shortly, but before that, delighted to say Peter Bone and Jonathan Haslam are joining me now. Peter Bone, why are you still backing Boris when Andrew Mitchell is not?
Well, Andrew Mitchell might not be backing the Prime Minister, but I think one of the 379 Conservative MPs or something like that, and the vast majority are supporting the Prime Minister. A few are not supporting him, maybe for personal reasons. But I think Boris has got all the right major calls correct, and he's got the support of the British people. Tonight, I spent 3 hours out canvassing in Northamptonshire with 11 other people, and the issue of the Prime Minister and parties didn't come up on the doorstep once. Well, no, that's not true. Actually, one person ranted at me about it, but he was always a Labour supporter. They wanted us to deal with the issues that affect them. They wanted that. Well, they didn't want the tax rise next April. They didn't want NHS staff to be mandatory vaccination for them. I think we're changing that policy. And they're worried about Ukraine, and they're worried about small boats. Those were the issues that came up. It just wasn't an issue on the doorstep. So I think people should be dealing with issues. And I think the problem the opposition have got is they can't beat the Prime Minister on the issues. So they're rather playing the player, not the ball.
Jonathan Haslam, what's Peter Bone got wrong there?
Well, I was fascinated to listen to Mr. Bone again, who I have great respect as a Member of Parliament, telling me exactly the same story that he told Newsnight a few days ago about his canvassing out in the constituency. And I must say, I applaud getting out into the constituency and campaigning as often as he does. However, when it comes to the fact that the British...
What are you implying, Jonathan? You don't believe this? You think it's a tall tale, do you, from Peter Bone?
Absolutely not. Mr. Bone can answer for himself. I find it marvellous that he's out in his constituency and he only finds people who support Boris Johnson, because I know he will tell us it's a unique constituency, and I'm sure it is to him, but it's not the water cooler conversations that I have with people. It's not the conversations I have with others. Yes, of course, they're interested in other things, but they're interested in the credibility of the Prime Minister. Can they believe what he says? And I'm afraid this example, when we have 12 issues which the police are examining, and we look at his background, those are the things that reach a tipping point. So we have Boris Johnson, who took us out of the European Union, lauded an agreement, and then said, actually, it's no good when he saw it in practice. We now have a Prime Minister who, in the manifesto, pledged not to increase national insurance contributions. They're going to go up. There are so many other examples that you can look at. There's a Prime Minister who has seen the ignominious removal of British forces from Afghanistan while his Foreign Secretary was sunning himself on a beach. We've seen Priti Patel, his Home Secretary, accused of bullying and getting off with sophistry, quite frankly. And there is a record. The Prime Minister actually is not fit for office for a whole range of reasons. And the reason this, Dan, has come apart is that this is the one instance that tips the balance, and that's really, really important.
Jonathan Haslam has put a lot there, Peter Bone. Let me start with, though, are you being disingenuous with this tale of your campaigning, your canvassing, Peter, or do you want to have something to say about that suggestion?
Well, it's just a matter of fact. So I went out, had a meeting with 40 people in my constituency on Saturday morning. Then I went out and canvassed actually in another constituency Saturday afternoon. Went out canvassing on Sunday in North Northamptonshire, and deliberately went out canvassing tonight in North Northampton to get the view. Now, it may well be that certain people in the media want to believe that the door is being slammed in our face and they all hate the Prime Minister. It just isn't the case. So I'm not trying to saying whether anything other than what I'm experiencing on the doorstep. But it's not just me, it's the teams that are out with me saying the same thing. So I think it may have polarised views. I think if you hated Boris before, you hate him even more. And if you like Boris, you like him just as much. But it's not. It's not. If things are... When I first went out, when it all broke, I thought, gosh, this is going to be awful. Door after door will be slammed in our face. And it wasn't. And people are more interested in other things. I would agree about the tax increase. People are very much against that.
No, and I'm against that too. But Peter, you raised the media, and I feel like this has become a media obsession. It's become a Westminster bubble obsession. And I feel like Tory MPs have to be very careful that they don't let the BBC decide who the Prime Minister is.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the idea that a Prime Minister could be brought down because of alleged parties that nobody knows whether they've actually happened or not, because we haven't even had the police report, and we must publish the full Sue Gray report when it comes. But any Conservative MP who's criticising the Prime Minister, I'd ask them, Have they been out knocking on the doors in their constituency? And is that what they're finding on the doorstep? Because I just don't believe it's the case.
Because Jonathan
and I
has...
do think it's a Westminster village
it's
story.
a Westminster
I'll be going
obsession.
back to the village tomorrow, and everyone will be talking about this. But they weren't tonight in Northamptonshire.
Because Jonathan Hassan, you obviously have a huge amount of experience of dealing with these sorts of media storms. You've got to admit, the media have paid far, far too much attention to this one story at a great cost to lots of other very important things that are going on, including the cost of living crisis and the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
I'd rather disagree, quite frankly, because this is important. This is our Prime Minister. If you read the Sue Gray report, I mean, she says it herself, it's pretty meaningless in many respects. She's talking about a failure of leadership. We are talking about the man who is supposed to be dealing with President Putin. We're talking about the man who is supposed to be taking us from a pandemic. We're talking about the man who should be restoring relationships with the European Union, not picking minor fights with the President of the French Republic. And it is about the calibre of the person in charge.
OK, no, well, I hear you both. I hear you both. And thank you so much for a fascinating debate. No, I hear you. I hear. That's Jonathan Hassan, former Director of Communications at Number 10 Downing Street for John Major. Before that, the Tory MP, Peter Bone. But of course, I want to know who you agree with. Jeff on Twitter says, there is no apology he can make that has any value. His rules were clear, albeit ridiculous, yet he and others willfully disregarded them whilst people died alone. There is no apology that is sufficient. And I say this as someone who voted his government into power. Michael, also via email, I accept the PM's sorry and intention to reform Number 10 Downing Street. I agree with you that this is not the right time for a change. Our PM deserves a chance to get on with the job. And Stephen, via Twitter, the Met getting involved ensures this topic will continue for months to come. The report released today has not been decisive. He should remain with the support of his party. Until the Met report is released, nobody can make an informed decision. Your verdict now, and it's a close one, this. It's still a strong majority, but 60% of you agree that Boris Johnson should stay on as Prime Minister. But quite a large majority, 40% of you, saying it is time for Boris to go. We'll keep a watch of this one, of course. Coming up is Keir Starmer guilty of political opportunism over Partygate, as Boris Johnson argued in the Commons. And did the SNP have any grounds to accuse the PM of willfully misleading Parliament? I'll get my panel's verdict on the opposition's antics in the Commons in the media buzz from 10. Plus, first glimpse at how tomorrow's newspapers cover Grey D-Day. But first, could a freedom-loving convoy across the Atlantic change the tide on COVID and force Justin Trudeau to stop disparaging the unvaccinated? Honk your horns for Neil Oliver. He's tonight's Outsiders straight after the break.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales, and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not as windy as the weekend, but of course, because we're in the recovery situation here, any winds could cause some further disruption. So we do have a yellow warning in place. Some sunny spells in the northeast, temperatures well above average, 11, 12, maybe 13 Celsius. Through tomorrow evening, we'll see some further outbreaks of rain and drizzle across North Wales, Northern Ireland, further showers in the far northeast, where the winds will be easing down, generally staying fairly cloudy. So again, most places frost-free as we head into Wednesday. But Wednesday, again, predominantly cloudy. Rain at times for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland. Not as windy in the far northeast, just a few showers here. Some breaks in the south in the clouds could reveal a bit of sunshine. And it will be very mild again. Temperatures once more for the vast majority, double figures, 11 in Hull, 10 in Cardiff, maybe 11 or 10 in the southwest of England as well. So very mild for the next couple of days. That mild air hangs on Thursday, but a cold front sweeps through, bringing a much colder feel by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
The great Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. And over the weekend, thousands of Canadian truckers descended on the Canadian capital of Ottawa in protest at the country's introduction of a vaccine mandate on lorry drivers crossing the US-Canada border. After a nearly week-long drive across the country, the aptly named Freedom Convoy brought the city to a virtual standstill on Saturday, while other sympathetic truckers blocked a border highway into the United States. The Canadian PM, Justin Trudeau, fled the city, perhaps not a surprise, having described the unvaccinated as a fringe group who are, he says, racist and sexist. Now Mr. Blackface himself is having to isolate because he's tested positive with COVID while the truckers continue their mission for bodily autonomy. One said, "We want to be free, we want to have our choice again, and we want hope." And the government has taken that away. That's something I'm sure we can all agree on, Neil Oliver. These truckers are inspiring.
Yes, they are, in a way that I haven't been inspired by anything else, really, since all of this began. Do you know, when it all kicked off, back in 2020, for the very first time in my whole life, I felt there was something wrong about what we were being told, and that was a unique experience for me, because I've never been a controversial, contrarian person. I've always kept my head down, towed the line, but I knew just somewhere in my gut that what we were being told wasn't right. And I held on to that instinct. And when the story began to develop about the truckers in Canada, I felt something very similar, but the flip side of the coin. I felt that what they were doing was absolutely right. I felt that for the longest time, contrary voices, opposition to lockdown and restrictions and all the rest was being dismissed by leaders, and it was being brushed under the carpet and ignored by the mainstream media. But for the first time, the efforts of the Canadian truckers were on such a scale that finally it just couldn't be ignored. It was just too grand. and almost begrudgingly, even the mainstream media have begun to acknowledge that it was going on. And there's something just completely right about the stand, because I think what was always required in the face of the authoritarian behaviour of leaders was for just enough people, regular people, to stand up and say no. And they're in Canada, where they've been under some of the most draconian restrictions and regulations, really, much like your homeland of New Zealand. And, that has turned, I think it's been like a ray of sunshine. It's a break in the clouds.
Well, it has been, Neil. You are right to say the mainstream media is starting to get onto this, although I was very disturbed by the BBC report I read over the past 24 hours that tried to suggest this is a group of racists and this is a group of criminals, which, by the way, is the opposite of what they did with the Black Lives Matter protests, for example, where they ignored the criminal elements. It's very interesting when it's a bunch of truckers fighting for bodily autonomy. They want to focus on the few bad eggs in the bunch. So I would make that point. And then the second point I'd make, Neil, is to describe this bunch as a group of anti-vaxxers is also completely incorrect. There'll be a heck of a lot of people amongst this group who have been jabbed, but just absolutely believe in what this group are trying to prove and show to the world.
Dan, I think that's always been the case. We've seen it here in the protests in London and in cities up and down the country. People have been turning out to oppose, authoritarianism and mandates.
Yes.
And it's been well demonstrated by Vox Pops and the rest that in amongst those groups, there have been cohorts of people who've been once, twice, 3 times vaccinated. Yes, there have been other people that haven't been vaccinated or whatever, but the lazy labelling of all of those groups as simply being anti-vaxxers is a disgrace. All of those people people of all sorts have had all manner of vaccines all of their lives. And to suddenly characterise them as anti-vaxxers simply because there might be hesitation in the face of one vaccine, or that there might be people who, although they've taken the vaccines themselves, have accepted quite rightly that it's about bodily autonomy and that people have to be entitled to make choices. But this lazy labelling of all of those people collectively as anti-vaxxers, I think has been absolutely shameful. I don't know how any journalist or anybody else can hear themselves saying it without cringing. But there's simply no doubt. I think it's without a doubt that what is happening in Canada. I spoke to some of the people involved in the Canadian protest on my show on Saturday night. I would defy anybody who listened to their testimony, particularly from a trucker, to not sense that his heart was in the right place. He was no extremist.
Totally.
He pointed out that he was a regular tax-paying, law-abiding member of his community. His job happened to be that he drove long distance. He was a trucker, a haulier, whatever, and he just wanted to stand up and have his voice heard as being in opposition to mandatory vaccines.
No,
and there was something whole-souled and genuine about him that I would defy anyone to deny.
No, it was a brilliant interview, Neil. I watched the show on Saturday night. And of course, if you did miss it, it is available on the GB News YouTube page right now. Neil Oliver, you're a gem. Thank you.
You too, Dan.
This is Dan Wootton tonight, and breaking tonight as MPs seek assurances from Boris Johnson that he will publish the Sue Gray report in full. I'll take the Tory temperature from Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, Treasurer of the 1922 Committee, and Conservative MP Joy Morrissey. Has the PM done enough to stave off a revolt? They'll deliver crucial insight from the corridors of Westminster at 10:20. Plus, is Keir Starmer guilty of political opportunism over Partygate? That's the view of Boris Johnson, but what do my superstar panel of Daily Express columnists Carol Malone, social commentator Esther Crago and senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth think? Find out when we'll also bring you a first look at how the newspapers react to the PM's Sue Gray D-Day. But there was some good news to come out of Parliament today as Sajid Javid announced the No Jabs, No Jobs mandate is set to be scrapped.
I'm announcing that we will launch a consultation on ending vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and all social care settings.
But how on earth did we ever let it get this far? Positive Professor Carol Sikora is uncancelled in a special segment tonight, reacting to the Health Secretary's U-turn. As Joe Rogan speaks out on his Spotify controversy for the first time, are the streaming giants' other big stars, Harry and Meghan, hypocrites for virtue signalling while still collecting a big fat £18 million paycheck? And is Mark Drakeford the most clueless politician in the country for revealing his love of nightclubs after shutting them all down?
Club Royale can you believe it? That's what it was called.
Where does Mad Dog Drakeford get off? Join me for the Media Buzz at 10:30 when I'll get the views of my multi-talented superstar panel. Yes, believe it or not, that's our very own Esther Kraku. You know we have to talk about that, but before we get to the last hour of the show, it's the news with Tamsin Roberts.
Dan, thank you. Here are the top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says he's sorry for the things the government did not get right following the release of Sue Gray's report today. It revealed a failure of leadership for allowing number 10 gatherings during lockdown. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will publish an updated report once the Met probe concludes, after Sue Gray said her report is extremely limited. Boris Johnson told the Commons today he accepts Sue Gray's general findings in full.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. Mr. Speaker, I get it, and I will fix it.
The Foreign Secretary will miss a trip to Ukraine tomorrow after testing positive for COVID. Liz Truss confirmed she has the virus on Twitter this evening. She'd been due to fly to Kiev with the Prime Minister to meet the Ukrainian president amid fears of a Russian invasion. Earlier, Ms Truss announced plans for new legislation to give the government new powers to sanction individuals and businesses linked to Russia.
This will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we have ever had. And it is the most radical departure in approach since leaving the European Union. Those in and around the Kremlin will have nowhere to hide. We will make sure that those who share responsibility for the Kremlin's aggressive and destabilising action will share in bearing a heavy cost.
A trial to extend school days in Wales has begun. 13 schools are to take part in the pilot, which adds an extra 5 hours to the school week. The 10-week trial is focused on supporting disadvantaged pupils and schools affected during the pandemic. A British woman who was found guilty of lying about being gang raped in Cyprus has had her conviction overturned. The woman, who's now 21, was given a 4-month suspended sentence in 2020 for public mischief after withdrawing her allegation. The Supreme Court of Cyprus found she'd not been given a fair trial. The Health Secretary is launching a consultation into whether it should be a legal requirement for health and social care workers to be vaccinated against coronavirus. Sajid Javid told the Commons mandatory vaccines for NHS workers was the right decision when it was made last year, when the Delta variant was dominant. He's asked for new advice from scientists now the milder Omicron variant is prevalent. Footballer Christian Eriksen has signed for Premier League club Brentford 7 months after suffering a cardiac arrest on the pitch while playing for Denmark. The 29-year-old, who's been fitted with an internal defibrillator, hasn't played since he collapsed at Euro 2020. The former Tottenham midfielder has signed a 6-month deal. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as we get it. Now, though, it's back to Dan Wootton tonight.
Time for tomorrow's News Tonight now in our Media Buzz. Let's take a first look at the newspapers just in. The Metro quote the Sue Gray report on their front page, which has the headline, "A Failure of Leadership." The publication describes Boris Johnson's premiership as plunging to a new low after today's update branded some of the alleged Tory parties difficult to justify and condemned the booze culture in number 10. This comes after the PM admitted it was not enough to say sorry and pledged to fix Downing Street. And the Independent leads with the same headline as the Metro, actually. The paper gives more prominence to Tory MP Angela Richardson, who quit her position as a ministerial aide earlier today over Partygate. In a Facebook post, Richardson explained her resignation was so she could focus on holding the government to account in the wake of the now published, albeit much shortened, Grey report. My superstar panel back with me now. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone is here. So too, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth and the social commentator Esther Kratkou. But breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has reportedly assured concerned MPs that he will publish the full version of the long-awaited Sue Gray report, a limited version of which was released today. This comes after a grilling in the Commons this afternoon, in which Sir Keir Starmer finally got the opportunity to deliver what he hoped would be a knockout blow over Partygate. Boris wasn't left stunned, though. He responded by accusing the Labour leader of making judgments beyond the scope of the limited report and playing politics by focusing on that rather than the issues people really care about, such as Brexit and, potential war in Ukraine.
Prime Minister, the British public aren't fools. They never believed a word of it. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign. Of course he won't, because he is a man without shame. And just as he has done throughout his life, he's damaged everyone and everything around him along the way.
There's a reason why he said absolutely nothing about the report that was presented by this government and later put in the library of the House earlier on today. That is because, Mr. Speaker, the report does absolutely nothing to substantiate the tissue of nonsense he has just spoken. Well, I can say to him, he can continue with his political opportunism. We are going to get on, and I am going to get on with the job.
Meanwhile, the SNP's odd little Ian Blackford brought even more drama to the proceedings. The party's leader in Westminster was ejected from the chamber, or rather jumped before he was pushed, after refusing Speaker Lindsay Hoyle's demand to withdraw his allegation that the Prime Minister had willfully misled Parliament over Partygate, which contravened the ban on MPs accusing each other of lying during debates.
Nobody believes you now, Prime Minister. That is the crux. No ifs, no buts. He has willfully misled Parliament.
Unless you withdraw, I will have to stop, and that's not good. Just withdraw the words.
I am standing up for my constituents that know that this Prime Minister has lied and misled the House.
Give me the paper. Give me the paper. Inadvertently misled. I'll give you one more chance. As leader of the SNP, I don't want to have to throw you out. I'm going to give you this chance. Please, to help me, to help the House, you withdraw on your earlier comment and replace it with inadvertently.
It's not my fault if the Prime Minister can't be trusted to tell the truth.
Carol Malone, political opportunism?
Well, Starmer, well, yes. Of course, what opposition leader wouldn't use what is happening with Boris for political opportunism? This is the Prime Minister that has not only upset the country, he has angered the country. So, yes, of course, the opposition leader is going to play on that. But, I think Starmer, if Starmer was a leader in waiting, he would have used opportunism much more than he has. He's had a million chances over the past 3 or 4 weeks to really skewer Boris on the detail. When all they're talking about how many parties at the beginning, who went where, Starmer could have asked specific questions. He's a lawyer. He knows how to do that. He didn't do that. He could have. What he was churning out today was what everyone's been saying. They've been talking about, the people who died without their loved ones. Everyone is talking about that, but he didn't really throw the killer punch to him today. Nothing he has said throughout this crisis has been the killer punch. And so I think he's missed the chance to score points on political opportunity.
Missed opportunity, Benjamin Butterworth?
No, actually, I don't think Keir Starmer's the best performer at the dispatch box, but today was
That's
the best.
the understatement of the year.
Today, well, unlike you, I can be objective, Dan.
You thought he was good today?
I thought he was outstanding.
Yeah.
And he spoke to the anger that the country has, which goes way beyond people that wouldn't actually vote Conservative, because he pointed to the Tory benches and said, you know that this man is not fit for high office, and you know that you should not have to choose between the policies you support and the basic standards of
What's
public
he saying
life.
then to the millions of people who chose to vote for Boris Johnson?
Well, they were perfectly entitled to do so.
Well, I know, but he's saying that they voted for someone who wasn't fit for public
he's not, and that is a real insult to those voters, Dan, because they didn't vote for
what
Boris
I'm saying
Johnson
is that
expecting him to
Keir
behave
Starmer
like this.
is insulting them. That's my point.
In what way?
Because he's saying that they voted for someone who is not fit for public office.
Well, you know,
and isn't that up to the voters to choose?
I mean, like most of your arguments, it doesn't make a great deal of sense. The truth is that Keir Starmer was saying that Boris Johnson...
I think most of the folk and I would probably beg to disagree, Benjamin.
Boris Johnson had let those voters down. And you know what? Lots of people voted...
But he didn't say anything fresh today. He didn't say anything new. He played on the anger. He played on people, you know, people feeling bad about not seeing their relatives. But he's done that before. There was nothing new in
Esther
that
Crackley,
today.
what about the SNP? Because Ian Blackford, as much as I might think he is a figure of just ridicule, this will play very well to his independent base in Scotland.
No, absolutely, and I think political opportunism is the right word to use here. But I don't, and I hate to take this a broader stance on this, but I don't think you realise how much public trust in politicians has fallen. Right? I get your argument about Keir Starmer and all of this, but I can't understand why you refuse to see the overarching issue, which is the quality of our politicians is through the floor. I read the statistic from the IPPR think tank, and it said 35% of people in 1944 during the Second World War saw politicians as merely out for themselves. Now it's 63%. That's almost double. Of the population see politicians as merely out for themselves. This is not just a Tory problem.
No, and this is why I think there's a wider point to this whole story, Carol, because I actually wrote a column about this for the Mail Online today. And my top line was faith in democracy was restored with Boris Johnson's landslide election and smashing of Labour's Red Wall in 2019. And what I think we're seeing, Carol, is the opportunity for lots of people to take revenge on the folk who voted for Boris and who voted for Brexit. And that's why the Tory party just has to be very careful not to subvert democracy.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people in his own party, never mind the opposition parties, who never wanted him to be Prime Minister, they're the people now who are turning against him. But there can be no doubt that report today, 5.5 pages, that's all it was. However, it has damaged government. It has damaged democracy. Because, you know, I was watching Theresa May today, and she was never close to being my favourite Prime Minister. However, she looked like a Prime Minister today. She sounded like one, and she made total and utter sense. And you look at her and you think this would never have happened under her. I know this could only have happened.
You know what?
Boris.
Why did Boris get elected? Why did Brexit happen? Why did Trump get elected? Because we're sick of people who look and talk like politicians.
This is what happens when you're a bit slack with what you do. You know, the report talked about, you know, what the Downing Street setup is like, how it's out of control, how it's overstaffed, and that is true. That's Boris's job to stop that happening.
Well, yeah, but Karen, a lot of that isn't on him. A lot of that isn't on him. A lot of that is on the Cabinet Office and the setup.
You've got Carrie's
He runs the ship.
They're all Carrie's stuff.
You've got Carrie's stuff.
They're all Carrie's stuff.
You've got Carrie's bring-ons and all the rest.
This might surprise you to learn, but Mark Drakeford loves nightclubs. Despite pushing already embattled venues to the brink by closing them for a month during the lucrative Christmas and New Year period, the Welsh First Minister got all nostalgic, reminiscing about his love of a boogie. This was for a cringe-worthy interview with Capital South Wales, attempting to make Drakeford seem human, during which he also admitted to working in bed. Fitting, since he's been sleeping on the plight of his citizens throughout this pandemic.
Never have I ever been to a nightclub.
I have been to a nightclub.
I'm not shocked. I don't know why I pulled a shocked face. When did you go to a nightclub, First Minister?
I was born and brought up in Carmarthen.
Oh, yeah?
The Club Royale. Can you believe it? That's what it was called.
Who was it?
The Club Royale.
Some
legendary nights were had.
Never have I ever worked from home in my pyjamas.
Never have I ever worked from home in my pyjamas.
That's never happened. Are you sure?
But I suppose I have I've sat in bed working.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, so he has, yeah.
Naturally, Drakeford's nightclub shout-out prompted anger online, including from regular Welsh GB News commentator Richard Taylor, who tweeted the actual state of this. He thinks it's one big joke. Maybe if Drakeford had a few more lock-ins and fewer lockdowns, he'd start giving a hoot about hospitality. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Kraku do stand by, because coming up, as Joe Rogan speaks out on his Spotify controversy for the first time, are the streaming giants' other big stars Harry and Meghan hypocrites for virtue signalling while still collecting a big fat paycheck? My panel will give their verdict next. In the media buzz, more Partygate front pages too. But next, Boris Johnson was fighting for his political life after the delivery of the Sue Gray report. But how did it go down with a Tory party that appears ready to give him the boot? Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown, treasurer of that all-important 1922 committee, and Conservative MP Joy Morrissey bring crucial insight from Westminster straight after the break.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into Northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales, and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not as windy as the weekend, but of course, because we're in the recovery situation here, any winds could cause some further disruption. So we do have a yellow warning in place. Some sunny spells in the northeast, temperatures well above average, 11, 12, maybe 13 Celsius. Through tomorrow evening, we'll see some further outbreaks of rain and drizzle across North Wales, Northern Ireland, further showers in the far northeast, where the winds will be easing down, generally staying fairly cloudy. So again, most places frost-free as we head into Wednesday. But Wednesday, again, predominantly cloudy, rain at times for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, not as windy in the far northeast, just a few showers here. Some breaks in the south in the clouds could reveal a bit of sunshine, and it will be very mild again. Temperatures once more for the vast majority, double figures, 11 in Hull, 10 in Cardiff, maybe 11 or 10 in the southwest of England as well. So very mild for the next couple of days. That mild air hangs on Thursday, but a cold front sweeps through, bringing a much colder feel by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Carol Sikora on the way, but first, embattled Prime Minister Boris Johnson today issued a solemn apology following the release of Sue Gray's report.
But firstly, I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. This pandemic was hard for everyone. We asked people across this country to make the most extraordinary sacrifices, not to meet loved ones, not to visit relatives before they died. And I understand the anger that people feel. Mr. Speaker, I get it, and I will fix it.
But will that really be enough to save him? Backbench Tories are circling, and there's growing speculation that there could be 54 MPs issuing letters of no confidence to the 1922 could be enough to turf him out of office, potentially, if he then lost the confidence vote. Well, joining me now to discuss is Conservative MP Joy Morrissey. Now, Joy, you have spoken or heard from the Prime Minister tonight at 6:30. What did he tell you? How did he reassure you?
He apologised again to all the Conservative MPs and said that he was going to fix the situation. He was going to make reforms to the civil service, to Whitehall, to number 10 communication, and better communication with the backbench MPs. And then he took our questions for a very long time and answered anything anyone wanted to ask him.
What sort of questions?
There were a lot of constituency-based questions, sort of a lot of planning, a lot of other education, sort of everything, actually. But it was nice to be able to just talk to the Prime Minister, ask him anything that came to mind, and hear his honest response.
And you haven't written a letter?
No, never.
Why not? What's stopping you?
So I think that Boris Johnson was elected through a Democratic mandate. We have 80-seat majority because of him. And I think it is my job to support him and the party. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
What are your fellow MPs saying? Lots of speculation tonight that the party is inching closer to that all-important 54 number. Is that what you're hearing?
It wasn't what I was hearing or seeing today. I think, again, because there was such a cry of outrage coming from the media, coming from the opposition MPs, when they turn to us and scream at us that we must,
he must resign, Angela Rayner says. He must go.
And it just reminds me, no, I don't want a Keir Starmer SNP coalition government. I want a Conservative government. And it actually unites us in a way that nothing else does. And seeing Christian cross the floor and then watching, Ian Blackford and Keir Starmer just really going for us, it made us, I think, more united to stand firm.
Well, I think it's very important that you raise the media here because we're entering into very choppy times. If the BBC, if ITV News, if Sky News, if Channel 4 News, if all of those folk can band together and cover a story consistently and constantly, as if there's nothing else going on in the world, by the way, for 2 months and force your party's hand, think of the power that gives back to the establishment. And I thought the whole point of Boris Johnson, the whole point of the pro-Brexit Tory party was to say to the establishment, you don't control us anymore.
Well, and I think it's interesting that they are using leaked documents from an ex-employee as well, who they despised a year ago, who's now,
and he didn't tell the truth a year ago, by the way.
No one believed.
He was a big fat liar,
but now he's the voice of reason, and it's very interesting. And if we allow trial by media, we are undermining the British justice system, we are undermining democracy, and we need to stand firm. Allow this investigation to conclude. Be rational, be calm, make decisions based on the premise of innocent until proven guilty, not trial by media.
Yeah, and by the way, that's not to excuse what went on at these parties, which were wrong. And I'm sure we can agree that, that they were wrong. But there has to be a degree of perspective.
There has to be a degree of holding up the democratic principles that we have and not allowing media to dictate who can be our prime minister. That's veering into very dangerous territory. And I think rational...
Especially when we know that most of that media is very biased against Boris because they were biased against Brexit. So there's a degree of revenge here. But look, stand by, Joy Morrison. We'll come back to you in just a moment because we're joined now by the Tory MP, Treasurer of the all-important 1922 Committee, Geoffrey Clifton Brown. Geoffrey, what are you hearing? I know Graham Brady cannot reveal how many letters there are, but do you get a sense, like Joy does, that actually Tory MPs are starting to rally behind the Prime Minister tonight?
Well, good evening, Dan and Joy. Today was one of the most bizarre days I think I've had in my entire political career. It started with a very much bland, summarised version, a short summary of Sue Gray's report. It then moved into the House of Commons, and it then moved into a more private session of the 22. And I agree with Joy. I've not always been uncritical of the Prime Minister, but I actually think after today, the Prime Minister has bought himself a little bit of breathing space within the party, which is extraordinary. But he has this sort of Teflon quality. And the next question is, you're going to say to me, what's going to happen next? I think what will happen next is that the Metropolitan Police are going to take a little while to conclude their investigations, despite the promises of Number 10 that they're going to publish the Sue Gray report in full. I think that's going to take some weeks. And I think the next really crunch point will come when we get the local government elections in May. But I think, as the Prime Minister says, what we need to be doing now is getting on the really important issues of governing the country, the cost of living increases, Ukraine, how we sort out the backlog in the National Health Service. These are the really important things that the Prime Minister now needs to turn his attention.
But, Geoffrey, you do agree that the Prime Minister at some point must publish the full Sue Gray report because, of course, there wasn't any detail released today.
Well, I was on your programme on Friday, I think it was, and I very strongly said then, and I believe it very strongly now, that he must publish the report in full. I think it's only reasonable for the British people to see exactly what Sue Gray has written. And after all, she's written it already. It's only the Metropolitan Police that are holding it up.
Is Boris Johnson still the best leader of the Conservative Party?
Well, it's interesting. We've got a very key by-election in my constituency, so I've had to spend a lot of time on the doorstep recently. I was out on the doorstep on Saturday and met a very large number of people. And actually the issue of Boris Johnson came up very rarely. Of course, there were a few that said he must go. And then there were a few on the other side who said, how dare you think about getting rid of him? But actually, on the whole, people were either asking about national issues, about Ukraine or about cost of living increases, or they were asking about the local issues to do with the by-election in the council. But Boris Johnson it seems the temperature in my patch, in this particular bit of my patch anyway on Saturday, has calmed. So I think he's probably bought himself some time now, and we'll have to see what happens in the next few weeks.
OK, Geoffrey Clifton Brown, Treasurer of the 1922 Committee, thank you so much. Joy Morrissey, let me just come back to you for a final word. Peter Bone said something very similar earlier in the show. And Michael Haslam, who was on with us, didn't believe him. He didn't actually believe that Peter Bone wasn't being bombarded by angry constituents when he was going about canvassing. What's your experience in your constituency? What about your email account? What about your Twitter? You know, what is the vibe from your constituents?
I have to say my experience is the same as Geoffrey Clifton Brown. I have people from both sides who have voiced their opinion, but really I had more people emailing me about animal sentencing and other issues, cost of living, and people were very happy that the vaccine mandate was, rescinded. That was a big thing actually in my constituency. I had protesters and so I think there was a relief on that side, and
you're doing some things right.
Well, that was good. I mean, I think that's a conservative way of dealing with it, and I'm happy to see that. So
now maybe just the national insurance increase next. Can you deal with that next, please, Joy Morrissey?
Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. Great to have you. Coming up on that very note, actually, our unvaccinated NHS heroes are set to get a reprieve after Sajid Javid announced a U-turn on that no job, no jab mandate. But how did we ever let it get to this point? Positive Professor Carol Sikora is uncancelled on that tonight at 10:40. But next in the media buzz, Harry and Meghan have made their first contribution to Spotify in over a year, slamming the streaming service's top podcaster, Joe Rogan. But should they give their big fat paycheck back if they're that worried about the COVID discussions happening on his show? My panel will take a look at that story, plus more explosive Partygate front pages straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Carol Sikora on the way, but let's return now to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. And more front pages have just been delivered. The Guardian, no surprise here, they lead tomorrow with failures of leadership. Tories turn on PM over Grey report. The paper describes how Bojo, as he desperately tried to shore up his premiership in the aftermath of the redacted report, as detectives were revealed to be investigating 300 photos and 12 events in Downing Street. This is a crucial one, actually, a party at the PM's private flat. In the words of the publication, Boris appears to have staved off an immediate leadership challenge by pledging a shake-up of his Downing Street operation and belatedly promised to publish that Grey report in full. The Times leads on the police investigating the PM's 4 lockdown parties. Grey's report disclosed almost no details of them after the Met Police told her last week to make minimal reference. Also on the front page is the story that passengers face years of masks on flights. Why? Experts claim that face coverings on planes will be one of the last coronavirus restrictions to be dropped globally. The Times understands UK carriers are seeking international consistency before changing the policy and will act as one when easing measures. Oh my goodness, can't go through that again. The Daily Telegraph lead on Boris Johnson asking Sue Gray to produce a new report into party allegations in an attempt to quell growing anger from Conservative backbenchers. Downing Street have issued a statement saying it has asked for another update, which would be published once received. It is unclear whether that report would contain the photographs, text messages, emails and statements gathered by Ms Gray's team, which interviewed more than 70 people. The Daily Mail characterises today's limited Grey report as raising more questions than answers, leaving Britain in political limbo. That's why they're demanding now publish the whole damn thing on their front page. Plus, baby joy for pop star Rihanna. I'm so happy for her, you know. What a great woman she is. She's had a lot of bad men. You know about that, don't you, Esther Kraku? But she's pregnant with her first child. with her rapper boyfriend. ASAP Rocky.
So hot. Sorry,
and you don't call him ASAP Rocky. Someone will call you.
Oh my God.
Very old, like me. And I think we've got the Eye, Benjamin's newspaper in here. 2 p.m. pleads for his job. Similarly to the other front pages, the Eye describes how the full Partygate verdict was muzzled by the Met, while detectives investigate 12 separate Downing Street gatherings, prompting claims that the PM was hiding behind the police probe. But the paper writes that amid Tory fury and calls for the PM to go, Downing Street has pledged to release the full report. Now, my superstar panel back with me, of course, it's the aforementioned Esther Kraku, alongside the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, and senior reporter at the Eye newspaper, Benjamin Butterworth. Now, this is probably the biggest story in the world right now. Podcast heavyweight Joe Rogan has spoken out for the first time on the scandal that's seen musicians Neil Young and Joni Mitchell withdraw themselves from Spotify. The streaming giant came under fire for hosting the Joe Rogan Experience, known for asking tough questions about the COVID response. Spotify stood its ground in the row, but agreed to add advisory warnings to any podcast discussing COVID-19. Then, in a video posted late last night, Rogan broke his silence.
I'm interested in finding out what the truth is. And I'm interested in having interesting conversations with people that have differing opinions. I'm not trying to promote misinformation. I'm not trying to be controversial. I've never tried to do anything with this podcast other than just talk to people. I will do my best to try to balance out these more controversial viewpoints.
For Harry and Meghan, who after signing a deal with Spotify want to continue taking the $18 million a year, but also want to continue their virtue signalling. So they waded in on the row, of course they did, saying, "We have continued to express our concerns to Spotify to ensure changes to its platform are made to help address this public health crisis. We look to Spotify to meet this moment and are committed to continuing our work together as it does." Carol Malone, what complete and utter hypocrites.
Vacuous, superficial hypocrites. These people don't care. These people don't care about causes. They care about money. They have no principles at all. No. It makes me so angry. You know, if they had any principles at all, they'd leave Spotify. They'd give the money back. And for them to say they're ensuring it's going to change its platforms, they have no power to change any platforms. Why should Spotify take any notice of them? They're also lazy as well, actually, because they're supposed to be producing this podcast for Spotify. This is one of the reasons they've been paid 80 million quid. And it's supposed, this podcast, this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to elevate underrepresented voices. The only podcast they've done is with Elton John and James Corden. Hardly underrepresented voices.
And look, Benjamin Butterworth, there was an opportunity for Harry and Meghan to influence the conversation over the course of this pandemic. That's what Joe Rogan's done. He's the opposite of lazy. He makes podcasts that are over 3 hours long. He books some of the most interesting guests in the world. And Harry and Meghan have been sitting on their asses in their big Montecito mansion. And to be honest, I just wish they would leave Spotify so we didn't have to hear from them.
Well, you don't have to hear from them because you don't have to listen.
We're not doing any.
There's only one podcast to listen to, so you wouldn't be listening for very long. Look, I mean, on the one hand, I find it a little bit tedious that they have an opinion on everything. And because,
it's incredible, isn't it?
As royals, which they effectively still are, that's the only reason anyone knows who they are, I don't exactly like that. It grates on me a little bit. However, I think it's quite unfair to say that they should have pulled their podcast programme off Spotify. I think they've expressed their influence by challenging Spotify. And actually, the only reason Joe Rogan spoke out was because of Harry and Meghan.
But the
because
hypocrisy...
until they spoke out, he hadn't
the
said a word.
hypocrisy is them keeping the money and saying they're going to try and persuade Spotify to do things differently.
Well, they
have no power.
Well, this is the same couple that harped on about...
They haven't done it.
Because both Joe Rogan and Spotify commented after they put out their statement.
Oh, please.
But it wasn't because of them.
It wasn't because of them.
Yeah,
it was. This is an awkward one in the sense that I'm a big believer in free speech. I'm a huge believer in the Joe Rogan podcast. It's brilliant. He should absolutely be able to do that. So it's not for a single second that I'm saying, oh, Harry and Meghan should cancel people. But for me, it's about the hypocrisy because they seem to want to cancel Esther, any media organisation, apart from the ones that are paying them millions and millions of pounds.
Exactly.
Because this happened with Netflix too.
But this is the same couple that were harping on about environmentalism and being environmentally friendly while flying around in private jets. I really don't know what people I do not know what people expect from this couple. And I think the bigger question is, are they experts on anything? Do they have any sort of expertise or deep knowledge? What did Harry do in the time he was so miserable benefiting from the royal family? What did he really do?
Moaned a lot.
Moaned a lot.
Now we get
got butt naked in Las Vegas. Did a short stint in the army. Meghan is an actress. Like, honestly, why would anyone look to these people for any sort of expertise on anything?
Hang on.
She's a very average actress.
Prince Harry put his life on the line for this.
Oh, you really think they would have risked the royal's life?
Yeah, I do.
Overseas?
I do. And actually, you don't get to sit there and say he did a little stint in the army.
No, but seriously, he was never in any real. I'm
respect.
sorry, he was never in any real danger. Let's be real.
You don't
I
know.
respect
He's in
his
more
service
danger
and I
than
thank
you.
his service. But he also gave it up willingly for his wife, which is his decision. But I'm just saying, he was never in any real danger.
No, but Harry, it is interesting.
Clearly doesn't.
It is interesting how Harry's climate change credentials and all of his good works and good feelings and thoughts came about after he met Meghan. He seemed to have none of them before, and suddenly he's doing everything she says. Now he's green. He's got a mind. He cares about the world. He didn't much care about it before.
Well,
which is why I find him unbelievable.
Craziness little chances. I think they are
They are
craziness little chances.
Yeah.
Is that us or Harry and Meghan?
Yeah,
Well,
could be us.
you too. That's all I'm going to say. They're craziness little chances. Honestly, they take the moolah. They take the greenback. They take the big bucks. The morals go out the bloody window the moment someone puts a fat check in front of them.
Can I just say, you've sworn twice there in 3 sentences
Sorry,
now.
they make me so angry.
You've used 2 swear words.
Apologies. We are after the watershed, though.
I know, just
but
as
it
well.
is rude. I'm sorry. Esther, final word.
What do they actually stand for? Can anyone tell me what Harry and Meghan actually stand
Themselves.
for?
Money.
Seriously.
Money. Making money.
I'm not being facetious here. Do they actually have?
But seriously, they're about making money and they'll do anything to make money. And this
Okay,
is
time to cheer
perfect
me
example.
up. So we all know that our superstar panellists are very talented.
Ah.
But many viewers were stunned to discover over the weekend that our very own Esther Krakow is a pole dancing sensation. Now, if you didn't know, pole fitness is the hottest new exercise trend. And in a clip posted on social media, Esther can be seen cutting some serious shapes in an insane 30-second freestyle.
Oh, my
And the footage certainly got people on Instagram talking. Carol Malone, I mean, check out
I
those
swear
moves.
to God, you look gorgeous, man.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Esther, can we see that footage again?
Oh, my God.
But this is a serious fitness thing, isn't it?
It is. And you know, many people don't know that Kate Middleton actually did it after her first child to drop a bit of the baby weight.
Kate Middleton pole dance?
Yes, she did.
Can we also... It's another story here. Story alert. Another person in her class is a vicar.
Yeah.
Female vicar.
Really?
Yeah. All the tabloids watching this, don't, because I'm going to get it first.
I mean, I have to say, there doesn't seem to be much Christian about those moves. Well, Benjamin Butterworth, is that making you want to go on the turn?
Well, I tell you what, you and me will go pole dancing.
Oh,
that would be great TV.
We thought you could go with Esther to a class.
As long as I was in
And
Speedo.
you have to wear a bra and pants. You have to wear a bra and pants. Yeah, exactly.
Well, multi-talented panellists, Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, and our star pole dancing queen, Esther Krakow. And coming up, my superstar panel will choose and nominate their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But of course, I choose the winner. But next, in Uncancelled, can unvaccinated NHS heroes finally rest easy after Sajid Javid's no job, no jab announcement? Positive Professor Carol Sikora is uncancelled in just a few moments. But first, here's a look at what's coming up on tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, is it time for Sage and government officials to finally be held to account for nudging us into lockdown oblivion? Dr. Gary Sidley, the top psychologist who prompted an investigation into the pandemic's grossly unethical scare tactics, joins me. Plus, GB News stars Nigel Farage and Darren Grimes give unfiltered takes on the matters that matter to you. And I break down the day's top headlines with my superstar panel. Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, Daily Star columnist Dawn Neeson, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. That's Dan Wootton tonight, airing Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Today, it's our positive Professor Carol Sikora. Finally, no jab, no job mandates for NHS and social care workers, which I have opposed since the beginning, are set to be scrapped.
I believe that it is no longer proportionate to require vaccination as a condition of deployment through statute. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, today I am announcing that we will launch a consultation on ending vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and all social care settings.
This comes after the brave NHS Dr Steve James stood up to Javid on a recent hospital visit.
I've had COVID at some point.
Yeah.
I've got antibodies.
Yeah.
I've been working on COVID ITU since the beginning. I have not had a vaccination. I do not want to have a vaccination. The vaccine's reducing transmission only for about 8 weeks with Delta. With Omicron, it's probably less. And for that, I would be dismissed if I don't have a vaccine. It's not, the science isn't strong enough.
That's your view. And your views?
And that great man was our uncancelled guest recently, and he explained why he thought vaccine mandates were a bad idea.
It's really about principles. I mean, doctors, we are thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it when it comes to a medical intervention with patients. There's three factors that I see to it. You talk about the risks, you talk about the benefits, and then you say, well, how do you see those things? How do you as the patient weigh those things up? And for me, I don't see how I can keep doing that for a patient when I say, well, I've bypassed that process myself.
And Carol Sikora joins me now. Carol, why is the government right to scrap this no jab, no job policy, in your opinion?
It's absolutely right. The problem is it's coming too late. A lot of administrators in the NHS have spent months planning for this. They're so far down the road. I've filled all sorts of documents, dictated them, written them. We have NHS patients in our clinics. We have to go by NHS guidelines, and to change it 2 days before you have to do something about it is complete madness, just like the whole reaction to COVID. The reason he's changing is nothing to do with Omicron, which is the excuse that suddenly the biology of the virus has changed. It's to do with pragmatism. 80,000 people that work for the NHS haven't actually taken the vaccine 2 days before you have to have it. And so there's no choice but to cancel the whole policy. This is policy on the hoof, and I think it really is very bad, the policy, to do this.
And Carol, it didn't make any scientific sense, did it, given that when we see those ONS figures about how many English folk have COVID antibodies, it's now 98% of adults. So you'd imagine if you work in the NHS and you're around folk a lot who have COVID, it could even be 99%, but you'd imagine at least 98% of these workers already have COVID antibodies. Many of them will have had natural infection. It just seemed completely unnecessary anyway.
It is, and there is precedent in the NHS. I, like all my colleagues, have to check for hepatitis antibodies to show we're immune to hepatitis, an infection of the liver that's transmissible by blood and touching people and so on. So it's important to have that. We all have hepatitis certificates. We don't object to that because the vaccine isn't leaky. It's 100%. You get the vaccine and that's it, usually for your life, and you can check every year that you've got antibodies. But the COVID vaccines are not like that. They're leaky, as we call them. They don't immunize everybody. They don't last for different lengths of time in different people. And we don't really understand it all. And they, of course, have side effects. Hepatitis vaccine has almost no side effects whatsoever. Same with polio. Very, very effective. This is different. Just like the flu vaccine, it's not 100% efficacious. So there's a lot of questions here about how we go forward. And to show the politics of reversing at the very last ditch of implementing this, the policy shows how weak the politicians are at dealing with scientific evidence.
Very good point, Carol Sikora. And I think, look, if we trust our NHS heroes, as we called them, to work all throughout the pandemic without being vaccinated, we also have to trust them now to make decisions about their own body. It's that concept of bodily autonomy. It is so fundamental. And I think what we put our NHS workers through psychologically was cruel and inhumane. I completely agree with you on that. Carol Sikora, our positive professor. Thank you so much, Carol, for staying up with us tonight. We'll talk to you again next week. But it's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And my superstar panel back with me now. Carol Malone, who are you nominating as your Greatest Britain this evening?
OK, my Greatest Britain is British Indian comic Sanjeev Bhaskar. You know who he is.
Oh, I love him.
Right, he's defending It Ain't Half Hot Mum, that these two have never heard of, right? The 70s sitcom.
That's so young.
Which would be considered too woke. Would be considered offensive by the woke society. Anyway, what he's saying is that you should not be editing these or cutting them or not showing them, or stopping them from being streamed. He's just saying that that all of these comedies, many of these comedies, are part of the social story to where we've got now, and so we should be seeing them. More people with comments.
Don't show it to Benjamin Butterworth. He'll have a little woke attack. Benjamin, who's your Greatest Britain nominee tonight?
Mine is a woman called Lily Abert, who is a 98-year-old survivor of the Holocaust. And I interviewed her for Holocaust Memorial Day last Thursday, and she is the most amazing person I've ever met in my life. She went through the ultimate atrocity of surviving Auschwitz, and she still has so much enthusiasm and love and care for the rest of humanity. I thought there's a lesson that you can go through something so evil and still be so full of love.
And what's so great is that she's using her experiences to inform and educate a new generation of people on social media. We've got a little look at one of her videos, actually.
In this, when they're killing people, the music, it was upside down situation. It was nothing was normal.
What a woman. Esther Kraku, your nominee.
This doesn't happen very often, and this is definitely a one-off thing. Sajid Javid for finally doing the much-needed U-turn on firing NHS employees that are not vaccinated, because quite frankly, science doesn't back it.
Absolutely. Well, look, all great choices there, but of course, today's Greatest Britain is Lily Ebert, the Holocaust survivor, who is just doing absolutely brilliant work to tell her story and to educate young people. What a great thing to do. Union Jackass time now. Carol Malone, your nominee.
Oh, mine are Meghan and Harry, refusing to give the Spotify money back. Hypocrites, the pair of them. What price their principals there? Well, it appears to be 80 million quid, so there you go.
That's how much you can pay to get them to shut up. Benjamin Butterworth, who's your Union Jackass nomination this Monday?
Easiest Union Jackass ever. It's Boris Johnson.
Oh, brilliant.
The shameless liar and charlatan that stood up in Parliament and went sorry, not sorry, about the whole mess that he's created with Partygate.
But Tony Blair, who lied about an illegal war, he's your favourite politician ever. Goodness gracious me. Esther Kraku, your nomination.
Well, blackface himself, Justin Trudeau, for Truckergate. Need I say more? I mean, I'm sure he's being prosecuted for being a proud black man. So that's quite unfortunate there.
Do you know what? I'm going to go with Justin Trudeau, actually, because I think the way that he has ignored this convoy and the way that he ran and hid rather than actually facing up to the folk who are good people really does him a disservice. So a great nominee there. Esther Kraku, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, thank you for being my first fabulous superstar panel of the week. Of course, a very busy news day and a very busy news week. I'm back tomorrow at 9. I hope you'll join me then. Headliners is next. Good night.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into Northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well, a lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not